Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you a book review from the original 62 book series, and it's book number 27, A Night in Terror Tower. Now I'm doing this review for a winner from my 525 Q&A celebration. A commenter on my channel, G King, has told me numerous times his favorite book is A Night in Terror Tower, and he asked me to review this book. And since he was one of the people that I drew names out of a hat for, I decided to go ahead and read this for my next couple of reviews. I think I have one more after this. I have to read Welcome to Camp Nightmare for the Gamer Brothers. But yeah, so A Night in Terror Tower, for those of you that don't know, was the second Goosebumps book I ever read. My first 5 Goosebumps books in a row, I remember clearly. They were The Werewolf of Fever Swamp, A Night in Terror Tower, The Girl Who Cried Monster, The Horror Camp Jelly Jam, and Say Cheese and Die. And I don't know. Part of my fascination as a kid with The Night in Terror Tower started with the VHS. I think I had like all of the Stein specials as a kid, minus Night of the Living Dummy 3 on VHS at my house. And I watched The Night in Terror Tower quite a few times when I was a kid before I ever read the book. And I've always liked the book. Don't get me wrong. I think, like, in some aspects, I really enjoy this book. But in a lot of regards, as much as I really enjoy a lot about it, I do kind of think that it's slightly overrated in some degree, to some degree. And I know this is a fan favorite Goosebumps book, and I don't like to talk bad about Goosebumps books, especially a book that I think is genuinely good like this. But I just think that this book has a couple of flaws to it that really strike to me, that I just can't ignore. And I've always seen these ever since I was a kid, mind you. But I want to say off the bat, I do recommend this Goosebumps book. This is a classic Goosebumps book. It deserves all the recognition it gets. It is deserved to be a classic book. It's just a solid Goosebumps book. Like, honestly, like, regardless of what I have to say, in my opinion here, I think this book genuinely is great in some regards. A lot of its strengths are top tier for Goosebumps, but some of its weaknesses really just take it back for me. And I'll get to that near the end in the review portion, but if you've never read A Night in Terror Tower, I highly recommend it. A lot of people tend to be on the positive wavelength with this book. I don't think anybody would be disappointed picking this up. It's a fun adventure type of book. Yeah, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but yeah, recommend this. So let's get into the plot overview without giving too much away. And yeah, that's an ironic statement for those of you out there wondering. When I say let's get into the plot overview without giving too much away, that's supposed to be ironic. So yeah, I do talk about spoilers, but then again, you know, spoilers to me is like there's a 20-year cap. If something's 20 years old, then it's really not spoiling. I think I'm more spoiling the newer books than these older books here, but with that being said, let's get into the plot overview. Okay, so the book starts off, and you see this girl. You meet this girl named Sue and her perspective. And Sue and her brother Eddie are vacationing in England, and they're around London. They are there vacationing while their parents are stuck in a hotel doing some business meeting stuff, and the parents somehow just let them tour the area. They've been to a couple of museums. They went to go see a couple landmarks, and Eddie picked a place called Terror Tower to go, and Sue's like, well, why do you want to go? You know, you're just going to be scared. And Eddie's like, you're going to be scared too. And like, Sue, you get a sense of Sue and Eddie's relationship. They kind of feed off of each other. I think Sue makes a comment saying that Eddie kind of brings out the worst in her later on in the story, but you get that sense that Sue is just that older sister that knows how to handle a brother like Eddie, and Eddie's kind of that crazy wild kid, maybe with undiagnosed ADHD. So, yeah, you can tell that sibling relationship. For me personally, like, I think this is a real sibling relationship because it feels just like me and my sister's relationship when I was a kid, except I was the older brother and she was the younger sister. Like, that dynamic of relationship really struck a chord with me off the bat, and it always gets me hooked into their characters reading the story. But anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. So they get uh, they get on this red bus and they're headed towards Terror Tower, and they get off and their tour guide announces that they're going to go inside of the Terror Tower, and they go inside and he takes them down to the torture chamber first. And while they're down there, they see this thing called the rack that sounds and feels really creepy. This is they give a kind of some historical background to this, where it was built up by Romans, in the medieval time, like pre-medieval times, when Romans used to inhabit England, and they built the original wall, and they turned the wall into a prison, and then they would send prisoners there who didn't pay the bills or taxes or whatnot. And I have to say, as somebody who is a history major and who is planning on being a history teacher, who has studied European history, this is pretty well researched for a Goosebumps book. I'm actually really surprised that R.L. Stein put this much thought into this. But way to go, Stein. Actually made something pretty historically accurate here. But they get to tour this execution chamber thing, and they get to see, the rack where they would pop limbs off, and they make a joke. The tour guide makes a joke about it, and the kids are creeped out. And Sue thinks that she sees a man wearing all black in the shadows of the chamber, but he disappears, and she doesn't think much of it. So the next room they go to is they head up to the north part of the tower, and Sue starts imagining like what it would be like for these prisoners living in this tower. And as she's climbing up to the north tower, she starts to have this deja vu moment, like she's been there before, but she's like, that's impossible. I've never been to London before. She's in her mind and in Eddie's mind, they both lived in America their whole life, and they're just touring England. And they arrive up to the North Tower, and the tour guide mentions a tragic story by this prince and princess of York that disappeared sometime in I think it said late 14th or 15th century. And their names were Edward and Susanna. Okay, now this right here, okay, the name drop of Edward and Susanna at like page 20 of this book, it's like around page 20, is the biggest foreshadow and spoiler ever in Goosebumps. Because once they name drop this, it's super predictable on what this is alluding to and who these kids are, okay? I know that's like a mega spoiler for this book, but the book does it itself at page 20, okay? So don't blame me, blame the book. Okay, so the tour guide tells the story of these two kids. And as they're trying to listen, Sue gets kind of sidetracked and notices the walls look like there's some writing on it, and she mistakenly thinks there's writing on it. She notices bench, and she touches it, and she starts to get kind of dizzy. And then when Eddie is trying to get her attention, because I think she dropped her camera and the lens broke, when they come to realization of the area around them, they notice that everyone is gone, and they can't find any of their tour guide. They can't find their tour guide. They can't find their tour group. So Sue and Eddie start to panic a little bit. They start to make their way down the stairs of the tower, and they hear somebody coming up the tower, and it's the man in black from earlier that Sue thought she saw. And the man in black isn't answering their questions of does he work here, or is he going to try to help them out. And he says, "Come with me. You must come with me. Do not don't resist. You're going to come with me." And once they realize that this guy is like a stranger, they try to run away from him, and they start to bolt. But before that, they notice that this guy is holding these 3 white stones, and he has these like piercing black eyes, and he has these 3 stones, and there's an allusion to this to Eddie as a character, that Eddie likes to pickpocket things from Sue. Like, there was a jump scare moment early on where Eddie takes Sue's camera, and Sue gets like some demented prank revenge on him in the execution chamber with handcuffs. So Eddie's a pickpocket. So when they start to flee from this guy, the guy drops the stones, and Eddie may or may not have picked them up. And so they go run away from the executioner guy, and the executioner guy, of course, follows, and they follow him. He follows him down to this dark hallway, and they're able to crack through a door after he says, don't move anymore, I got you." And they pretty much lock him out on one side, but they accidentally enclose themselves in this old king's chamber, and the executioner guy comes back out, and he's going to chase him again, and they eventually find themselves into a storm drain. And when they get into the storm drain, they just bolt for it, and they try to go and find the exit to the sewer, and the man in the black cape catches up to them, and what happens is that they hear these rats coming, and Sue and Eddie grab for the metal thing above in the sewer, and these rats just come and chase the executioner guy away, or the man in the black cape away. And so they get out of the sewer, and they make it on the street, and it's nighttime. They don't know how or when this happened. Time has really flown by. It's after close of the tower, when it's supposed to close at like 5 o'clock. And they get stopped by this old guy who asked them what they were doing. They said, "Oh, this guy was chasing us. We had to go down into the sewer." And the guy was like, "Oh, you're not supposed to be in the sewer. I might have to report you." And they're like, "No, we just want to go back home. We just want to go back to our hotel, find our parents." So the guy's like, okay, he has a change of heart. It calls a cab, and they let him, calls a cab for him. Cab comes and picks him up. It's this young guy. They get in the cab, and they head to the hotel that their parents are at and they're staying at for their trip. And during the ride, Sue realizes that the money she has on her, the money that her parents gave her, isn't any good for the cab. And the cab driver is like, when they pull up to the hotel, the cab driver is like, "Well, you got to pay me in British pounds. You got to go inside and grab your parents. And if you're not back in 5 minutes, I'm going to come in after you." So the kids go in, but this is where the story gets kind of weird. They forget their last name, but they remember the room number, and they go up to the concierge person at the desk, and they ask, they go up to the room first that they remember. They go straight up to the room, and they get let in by the maid, and they realize that the room was vacant. So they go down to the concierge desk, and then they say, "Hey, we're in this room," and they check the files of the room, and it says the room was never booked. And what I dig about that part of the story is that it's directly playing off of the urban legend of the Europe. It's an urban legend told here in America about like people going overseas to like Europe and traveling. It's this old hotel urban legend where the woman takes her mom to a hotel. They leave her in the hotel room to go get medicine for her, and when she comes back, the room doesn't exist, or there's other variations where the room is completely empty, and they go to the concierge desk and they're like, "Well, you never booked a room here," or "The room never was booked because it doesn't exist." And the person's like, "You got to be kidding me, my mom, she's missing." So yeah, this book kind of plays on that urban legend in a couple of ways. But once they realize that, the concierge guy's like, "Hey, I'm gonna try to find your parents. Why don't you go to the restaurant, eat, and sit down?" And Sue and Eddie are like, "Okay, well, we haven't eaten anything," so they go just try to get something to eat, and they get an order of tea and scones and all that, and they scarf that down. And then they realize while they're eating that they don't know how they're going to be able to pay for it, but they're like, "We can just charge it to the room," but how can you charge it to the room when your parents don't have a room to charge it to? So a little flawed logic there, but they're kids, I'll let it slide. And then the taxi driver comes in from earlier, and this spooks the kids, and they bolt and run into this kitchen area where they can hide from the taxi driver. And lo and behold, the man in the black cape finds them. He said he chased after him. He's like, "You can't run from me now." And the guy orders Eddie to give back the stones that he took from him earlier. So Eddie took the stones, Now I don't remember if he found like if the stones were knocked on the stairs when they first saw the guy, or he took them when during the sewer altercation. But at some point, Eddie got the stones, and he had to give them back to the man in the black cape. And this is the point of the story where the man in the black cape says the spell. That goes into this weird light effect. Everything gets warpy, as Sue describes it, and everything fades to black. And then the next chapter begins, and this basically starts the next big location change of the story. And they go back in time, and Sue and Eddie have no idea where they are. They think they're in the hotel in some hallway they can't find their way out of. They see these people with these hoods, like hooded people. And then they follow some trail of voices, and they see this huge fire pit with like stone cobble everywhere, and like piles of just meat and vegetables. And there's people sitting around the fire roasting an entire like I think goat or something. And they've never seen anything like this before. And they're like, where are we? So they go and try to ask them for help. And the people are stunned because Sue and Eddie are wearing clothes from the 21st century. And one man says, it's them, it's them. And this spooks the Sue and Eddie. They're like, this is weird. And they try to find a way out of where they ended up at. And when they exit, they notice that all the buildings of London are gone. And there's cottages everywhere. And there's hay and like oxen with people like, taking oxen carriages everywhere. And the streets are no longer paved. They're just cobblestone. And they realize that they are somehow traveled back in time, and they don't know how they got there, but they assume that it's something that the man in the black cape did. So they find this boy, and the boy, they ask him about the hotel. Where's the hotel? He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never heard of such a word. And this spooks Sue and Eddie a little bit. And when Sue after she has a little monologue of thought, she looks for Eddie, and Eddie has vanished. And Sue is trying to find Eddie, and then she bumps into the man in the black cape, and she asks, where's Eddie? And he's like, Eddie, don't worry about him, but you must come with me now. And there's a moment where Sue almost gets captured, but Sue somehow escapes, and the man in the black cape gets sidetracked a little bit. And she runs off and finds this area between two cottages. She finds this, newly appointed mom. She has like a newborn in her hand. And she's like, and Sue's like, you have to hide me. She's like, I can't hide you. And then Sue offers to pay her with the gold that she had in her pocket that the taxi cab driver wouldn't take early on in the story. And the girl's like, oh yeah, I'll take that. She takes her inside and hides her in like this straw basket. And then when the Lord High Executioner catches up to the cottage, she immediately tells him where she's located. And Sue is taken along with the cottage, along with the basket out of the cottage. And Sue's like, where, and she's like furious with this woman. She's like, where am I going? What's going on? And the woman like apologizes to her, but like she can't go against the Lord High Executioner. And this is where it's revealed to Sue that this man is an executioner, and he's like, and she's starting to wonder, what does he really want with me and Eddie? And she's taken by horse and carriage to this area, and when she's taken out, she realizes that she's back at Terror Tower. And when she realizes that, she's yanked out of the thing, and she's dragged into the tower again. And she's taken up to the North Tower, and on the way, she sees these people weeping and like trying not to look at her in the face, like something really sad's about to happen. I think they all know who she is and what's about to happen to her. Really, really foreboding feeling when you read that part of the story. But she ends up at the North Tower, where all these weird things started happening, and the previous time period that they were in. And that's when she bumps into Eddie. And Eddie was revealed to be captured off page. And Eddie and Sue are up there. And they have no idea what they want. And then this old looking man gets brought into the room. And the door's left open. And they all and the people who put them in the room walks away. And this is when the story, the entire story starts to make sense. This man reveals himself to be a man named Morgred, and Morgred may or may not have been behind helping Sue and Eddie escape from a potential smothering execution to the future. And Sue and Eddie are fighting this realization until they start thinking about what Morgred was trying to say through his explanation. It's starting to make sense for Sue, and once he touches Sue and Eddie, they pretty much regain their memories as this princess and prince of York. Like I said, the book spoils this at page 20, essentially, all the way back. But after that realization, they are like, well, Eddie somehow had acquired the stones again from the executioner guy, and he's like, well, I have the stones. If you did the spell before, can you do it again? He's like, yeah, but I'm not going to do it because something bad is going to happen to me if I do. And unfortunately for Sue and Eddie, they feel like their hopes of going back to the time they were in has been squashed, and their fates are pretty much sealed, no thanks to Morgred. Now, when Morgred wasn't paying attention, Eddie somehow gets the stones back from him. And before Eddie got the stones back from Morgred kind of reveals the exact spell that he used. It's like a 3-word spell. And he explains that the Lord High Executioner must have overheard the spell and took the stones from him, and that's how the Executioner was able to travel to the future to find them and bring them back. So when Eddie heard the spell and he stole the stones back, he may or may not have tried to replicate the spell. And once he does that, pretty much the ending happens. No climax, nothing. The ending just happens where Eddie chants a spell, and they may or may not make it back to the future. Now, who makes it back to the future might be a group of characters. And somehow Eddie was the one behind it to make it work. And then there's a happy ending involved. And that essentially is A Night in Terror Tower. So let's start off with the strengths of this book. Strengths were, Sue as a character was really strongly written. Lots of ups and downs with her character. You could really feel the terror for her and Eddie. Eddie was some comedic relief to the story. The setting rocked. There's a really good scope change in this book where it goes from present day to past. And you really get that sense of atmosphere through the vivid imagery that this book lays out. Has some really profound descriptions of the set around the Terror Tower, and going back in time, you really get a sense in your brain of what that would look like, because Stein put the effort to really highlight that. There's a sense of terror with like losing your memory and feel like you're going crazy, and like losing your parent, like playing on that urban legend. That urban legend I really love so much, like the vanishing room in the hotel. It's played in this a little bit, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's just something about the Lord High Executioner comes out very foreboding and very sinister. I mean, there's some genuine stakes. Like, these kids are going to be smothered to death by the end. Like, it's pretty much laid out that that's going to be their fate if nothing changes. And there's some stakes and trying to avoid doom, impending doom. It's a really tense-filled book, and it had me on the edge of my seat reading it. And every time I've read it, it's really had me on the edge of my seat. But I do have complaints with it. My first complaint, this book really only has 2 for me. So, like I said, near the end of the plot overview, Morgred casts a spell, and it's like an imperfect spell where he actually admits that it changed their memories, but it wasn't a perfect thing. So when Sue and Eddie were sent to the present, they lived in America, they had brand new parents, and they were vacationing in London. They had no memory of their past life. But with the twist, I'm not even going to call it a twist. The ending has Eddie cast the spell, the same exact spell Morgred did, but somehow the book alludes to by the end that they had kept their memories the second time they went back. So how does that work? What? You're telling me a kid out sorcerer, a professional sorcerer, which Morgred is declared as in the book. What? Such a glaring thing. It just makes no sense. Like, okay, apparently that's the thing. I mean, the context is there. Like, maybe there's like some subtext things that you can add to the spell, like in your brain. Maybe it's kind of like a wish. I don't know, but it makes no sense. It's a little bit of plot convenience there with that bit with Eddie. But the big thing I have an issue with in this book is that there's no climax. There's no climax, no real ending. The ending to this book is anticlimactic. Oh, when I say there's no climax, there is no climax to this book. It's so anticlimactic. Wow, I just feel like the Lord High Executioner character was wasted because of the lack of treatment near the end. That really bugged me. Really bugged me a lot. Not to mention the repetitive chase scenes. The action of this book is just them running away from people. Like, I kind of wish that the book kind of dived into the time travel earlier, way earlier, and they got into some like medieval hijinks. Maybe go like jousting. Maybe go see like a fight, a night fight, or something, just to spice it up. Maybe have them hide in knight armor, something like cliche but fun at the same time. This book just didn't do any of that. It just focused on building atmosphere more than I don't know, riveting action sequences. It was I don't know. Those three issues really are the things that bog the book down for me, and they're like medium hitting issues. And if I'm being honest, from a 0 to 5-star basis, I'll probably deduct 0.3 off for the repetitive action sequences, the lack of climax. Honestly, you know what? I'll be more harsh on that and deduct 0.4 off, and only deduct 0.2 off for the Morgred's spell plot convenience thing. But I'll still accumulatively deduct 0.9 off for all three of those things I mentioned, and give this book a 4.1 out of 5. I think it's a fair grade for this book. I don't think I'm being that harsh on it. I think it's very fair. I think it's a very good book. It just has problems that are very similar to other 4.1s. I think it's pretty much almost equivalent to my disappointment as Vampire Breath, even though I kind of like both of them almost equally in some regards. Maybe Vampire Breath slightly more. But yeah, I still really enjoy this book. I think a 4.1 is a pretty decent score for this book. Very good book. Highly recommend it. Thanks, G King, for recommending this book for your response. And I'm glad to have read this book for you. So yeah, that's my thoughts on A Night in Terror Tower, the book. Let me know down in the comment section, what do you think about this book? Do you love this or do you hate this? I'm dying to know. And I'll see you next time.